years, you were sleeping with your wife's sister?
Yes.
Regularly?
Yes.
Often, very often.
Without protection?
Without protection.
How am I supposed to expect and believe that he is my dad after being lied to for so long? It's hard to believe something after one lie and then another. It's hard to believe.
That you slept with behind my back.
Not at all.
Yes, you did.
Not at all.
My supposed to be best friend at the time was living with us, and she was sleeping with him and his cousin at the same time.
Mr. Griffin here is a real stand-up guy. So he did what stand-up guys do. He had a 2-year affair with his wife's stepsister. He says that relationship produced a daughter. However, Mrs. Richmond, who's the stepsister in question, says that daughter isn't Mr. Griffin's. To make things even juicier or weirder, Mr. Griffin's other daughter, Lakeisha, is in court to support his claim. One wonders how she could even do that. Was she a witness to the natural insemination of Mrs. Richmond? Anyway, how can someone even have an affair with their sister's husband?
How do you end up having an affair with your sister's husband?
Not thinking, just being wild at that time of my age, and just not caring about anything. I can admit to that. I'm trying to fix it for her now.
Mr. Griffin, I have to ask you now. I mean, you a married man, and it's bad enough you sleeping around outside the marriage. But your wife's sister?
Honest mistake? That's wild. Mr. Griffin knew Mrs. Richmond was his wife's sister. How can it be a mistake? Did he accidentally fall into bed with her? Did he want to cheat, but just not with her? We aren't buying that, Mr. Richmond. Honest mistake? More like a dishonest mistake.
So for 2 years, you were sleeping with your wife's sister?
Yes.
Regularly?
Yes.
Often, very often.
Without protection?
Without protection.
Lord, you should be able to be alone
Right.
with your sister's husband and not sleep with him, or
Yes,
him
Your
not
Honor.
sleep with you.
Now get this, Mr. Griffin was in a 10-year-old marriage when all of this began, so he'd known Mrs. Richmond for an extended amount of time, and she believed that she was in love with him. So when she got pregnant, she decided to tell Mr. Griffins that he was the father and no one else.
I think that's why I chose to tell him first before anyone else that he was the father. We slept together more unprotected than I did with the other
And when you told him, what was his response? Do you remember?
As I remember, he said yes right off. He came over to my house and he picked her up and he went up on the stairs and he, put her up to the light and he said, yeah, she could be mine.
After all of that, Mrs. Richmond left where she was living, and since then, Mr. Griffin lost contact with both Mrs. Richmond and Tikia Richmond, who he says is his daughter. Importantly, Mr. Griffin says he's never doubted that Tikia is his daughter. However, it's not so clear-cut because Mrs. Richmond was also seeing other people at the time.
But at the time, he also knew I was, with other people also, and he was a married man, so, and I'm sure he was with other people too, so I was with 2 other guys.
So you are admitting that during the window of conception, you were also sleeping with 2 other men?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you tell those men you were pregnant as
No,
well?
Your Honor.
So, how can Mr. Griffin be so sure that Tikia is his? Well, he says he has photos of when he was young, and she was young, and says they look too alike. But where's Mrs. Griffin's in all this? How did she know that her stepsister got pregnant by her husband?
So, Mr. Griffin, how did you tell your wife that you got her sister pregnant?
I didn't, because I was too embarrassed to tell her I did that,
So, Tikia, I want to hear from you.
Right.
Because I want to understand, at what point did you find out?
Like the first time someone brought his name up was like, my mom never brought his name up.
Mrs. Richmond never told Tikia who her dad was, so Tikia has lived her entire life not knowing whether her dad is alive or not. The emotional weight of not knowing her father weighed heavily on Tikia, but there was nothing she could do since her father wasn't present.
How hard is that as a young woman growing up?
It's just sad. And then I always have to hear stupid stories now about some old 70s love triangle. It's just stupid.
Wow, your family, they're your links. They're your pieces to your puzzle when you figure out who you are as a child.
Exactly.
The drama got into another gear when Tikia tells the court that a few years back, she got a message from Lakeisha on MySpace. Lakeisha, who is Mr. Griffin's daughter, had contacted Tikia and told her that they were half-sisters. So what made Lakeisha do that?
Well, I was in my dad's room one day because my sisters was taking up the other mirrors, so I was in there doing my hair. And after I got done and I'm getting all my hair supplies out of his room and stuff, I'm straightening up his dresser, and I see some mail from Jackson County Child Support. And I began to look at it and I seen her name.
Now things are starting to heat up. How did Mr. Griffin end up with child support papers for Tykia if Mrs. Richmond didn't really believe that Tykia was his daughter? Was Mrs. Richmond just trying to scam him, or is there something else afoot here?
Did Mr. Griffin end up with child support papers if you said he was not the father?
Okay, I'm getting ready to explain that to you, Your Honor. When I moved to Wisconsin with her when she was almost 2, and we took a paternity test at that time, okay? I went on and did the child support, and she told me that, well, the test proves that he's not the father, so do you have another name to give me?
Let's stop a bit here and think about what's happening. Mrs. Richmond says she got DNA paperwork saying Mr. Griffin isn't the father, and Mr. Griffin says the opposite happened. All this means is that someone here is telling a really big and really expensive lie. Our objective right now is to find out who that is.
Get down to the bottom of this was because of the loss of your husband.
Correct. One of the other sisters, Griffin sisters, her wedding was May 21st, 2011, and she invited me and my husband believed I looked like some of the other sisters. So he was like, yeah, we should go.
The loss of Tykia's husband is the only reason she's decided to find out the truth behind who her father is. She believes that's what her husband would have wanted. So let's find out the truth.
Mr. Griffin, you are not her father. 32 years of thinking you were this woman's father.
I'm just gonna have to help her find it because I got names for her. So whatever I gotta do to find her father, I'm just gonna have to continue.
I'm sorry.
Okay. That's cool.
You still my sister.
Jesse Ball seems to be capable of immaculate conception because Ms. Cox told him that she couldn't get pregnant, yet she's appeared in court with a child she's claiming belongs to Ball. Of course, Mr. Ball says that's nonsense, since Ms. Cox clearly told him that it was impossible for her to give birth. To make matters even worse, he says Ms. Cox was sleeping with multiple men while sleeping with him. However, Ms. Cox says that's a lie. She's also countersuing Mr. Ball for $460 for an unpaid loan.
Morning, noon, night, we would talk every day, and maybe within the last 90 days of me, serving my time, I was getting letters from her best friend stating to me that she was sleeping with other men, going out with other men, and that everything wasn't, what I was being told. It wasn't what it seemed. So when I asked her about it, she told me there's nothing to worry about. Whatever was going on, it's done with. Don't worry about it.
Now, Ms. Cox says that while Mr. Ball was away in prison, she was in a physical relationship with other men, and Mr. Ball knew about it. She says despite knowing about those relationships, he still wanted to come back to her after jail. Then Ms. Cox says the only reason Mr. Ball found out about her other relationships from her friend was because she beat her to the punch. And that's because, and get this, the so-called best friend is also Mr. Ball's baby mama. That's right.
I told her, this is what I'm hearing. Now, what she says about it being just a physical thing, what I'm hearing is this guy was living there, he was staying there, he had keys to the place, she put him out the day before I came home.
No, I did not.
Now,
Mr. Ball, when you got home, did you have any other indication that she was cheating?
Yes, I did.
How was that when
Yes,
I was
I
with
did.
you every second
well,
of the day?
You were every
Now things are getting hot. Mr. Ball has evidence that Ms. Cox was cheating on him, and it's pretty solid evidence too. The evidence is so solid that Ms. Cox had to admit in court that she told this other man that she loved him, but she just told us a few minutes ago that it was just physical with them. That doesn't sound just physical to us. But wait, Mr. Ball has more proof.
Other proof that she was still cheating.
Okay, one day I was at home on the internet grabbing pictures off of our computer, and I pull up a picture, not one picture, but multiple pictures.
Hanging out with the guy. He knew about the guy.
Of her, and not only just that guy, another guy.
No.
According to Ball, the pictures were of Ms. Cox kissing those guys, hugging them and being all cozy with them. But seriously, what's the big deal? Didn't he know she was having intimate relationships with those men before he returned from prison? But even the history of the pictures is kind of weird.
Her arms around guys, kissing around guys.
No, it wasn't no
asking
pictures
her.
like that. And the pictures were deleted. They were in the recycling
No,
bin.
I
He was
deleted them.
looking for a reason to
deleted
argue.
So
And the
you're
pictures
saying that
weren't
was
even
your
uploaded.
past?
The pictures were not even uploaded to the computer by me. They were uploaded by his child, the mother of his other child.
Your best friend.
Right. That you slept with behind my back.
Not at all.
Yes, you did.
Not at all.
Yes, you did.
Not at all.
What? Anyway, let's leave all that and come back to the main issue. Ms. Cox has a child, and Mr. Ball says the child isn't his. However, Ms. Cox says that Mr. Ball had unprotected relations with her the night he returned from prison.
Yeah, he slept with me unprotected the day that he came home, and during intercourse told me he wanted me to get pregnant.
Okay, well, she also made sure that she didn't tell me anything about her being pregnant until after the fact of me dropping her off to work.
No, I didn't know I was pregnant.
She told me that before I dropped her off,
He
when I
stopped
dropped
at the-
her
he
off, I
stopped at the
turned the corner.
pharmacy.
Before I even turned the corner from getting gas, my phone's ringing and it's her.
'Cause I was nervous.
I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant.
It's hard to even keep track of all the arguments and counter-arguments that Mr. Ball and Ms. Cox are making. It seems they just want to do nothing but scream at themselves all day. This is despite the jaw-dropping things they've both been up to, with Ball sleeping with Ms. Cox's best friend, and with Ms. Cox having physical relationships with other men while Ball was in prison. It's just all so tiresome.
So, Miss Cox, when your daughter Gabby was born, was Mr. Ball there?
Yes,
Did
ma'am, he
participate?
was. Yes, ma'am, he did. My water broke February 10, 2010 during intercourse with Mr. Ball, and he drove me to the hospital. He was there the whole 3 days I was in the hospital. He drove me home from the hospital, and we stayed with him. He never expressed to me in the hospital that he had doubt or anything.
In the photos Ms. Cox presents to the court, Mr. Ball looks very proud to hold his daughter, but now in court he's saying he isn't really sure that the child is his.
And if
It's
you
just
felt
with the
like that
fact
wasn't
of
your child,
it's just
why
with the
are you-
fact of everything that has added up over the years. Her herself telling me, I don't think that, this is not your child. When we get into arguments, it's not my child. When we're fine and we're dandy and everything's
I haven't
okay,
said that to you in
that's my
years.
baby.
I have not said that to him in years.
But you have said it to him
Yes,
before?
I have said it to him. Yes, I have.
Now it's time for us to hear from the witnesses Mr. Ball brought to court. One of them is his fiancée.
I know that from when me and him got together, it was right away an issue. The first day he came down my house, she showed up at my house. She was outside honking her horn, screaming, crying. He had to actually
Your Honor,
leave.
Ms. McDonald,
She's the reason why
why
she
do you
refuses now.
think Ms. Cox is claiming that Mr. Ball is her child's father?
I feel like the child is just a pawn to get him back. Everything is about him.
Mr. Ball's next witness is his mother, and she tells the court that the situation has been going on for years, and there's a lot of bad blood between Miss Cox and Mr. Ball. She says Miss Cox has always been aggressive towards her, but Miss Cox says Mr. Ball's mom has never been a good grandmother. Miss Cox also calls up her mother to give a statement, and the judge helps her to read it since she has a problem with her voice.
Dear Judge Lake, what I especially don't like is how he, and that would be Mr. Ball, has treated my daughter and family after all we've done for him. When he got out of prison, he stayed with me for 3 months rent-free, and he didn't lift a finger. I really saw his true colors in December of 2011 when he kicked my daughter and grandbaby out in the snow with all their gifts.
That's a heavy accusation, and Mr. Ball immediately says he's dated plenty of black girls. Ms. Cox says it's not true, and their conversation again devolves into a lot of random arguments and counter-arguments. At this point, we really cannot wait for the DNA result to be read, but this case has just one more twist left in store for us.
I want to bring this back to Gabrielle. You still wanted to step up to the plate just in case this child was yours. Is
Right.
that your contention?
Yes, yes.
It's never about my child. It's always about me because we were just sleeping together a week ago.
A week ago?
What?
Yeah, a week ago. We were
week
just
ago?
at your mother's house sleeping together a week ago.
week ago?
Wait
Were
a minute.
we or were we not, Miss
At
Montgomery?
her mother's house.
At his mother's house,
week
yes.
ago?
Did that not make your jaw drop? It certainly made ours hit the ground, and it gets even worse.
And just a few weeks ago, about a month and a half ago, I helped him with money for child support for his other daughter so that he wouldn't go to jail, so he wouldn't be incarcerated. And these are the text messages from him asking me for the money and telling me that he would pay me back.
Jerome, please hand me that. And this is the basis of your countersuit. Is there any way you could help me out with a little money so I don't go to jail when I go to court?
In court, Mr. Ball confirmed that he borrowed the money and didn't pay back. The judge ordered him to pay back the money within 60 days, and then asked for the envelope to read the paternity results. At least now we'll get a conclusion to this dramatic case.
Mr. Ball, you are her father. Is that the news you wanted?
Yes.
So understand this. Whatever the doubt has stopped you, blocked you from doing, from fully committing, from fully taking responsibility, that excuse is gone now.
Right.
and you're her daddy, her father, and she's counting on you.
No one wants to face their mother in court and start spilling family secrets, but Ms. Curtis had to do this to her mother just to find out who her father was. Today, Ms. Curtis believes her mother hid her father's identity away from her for 14 years. And right now, she has no idea if the man she currently calls father is even her father at all. In fact, her mother has said that the man Ms. Curtis grew up calling dad isn't genetically related to her whatsoever.
Find out that the man you originally thought was your father was not your biological father.
My grandmother, she sat me down and she said that she wanted to tell me the truth about who my father really is to be, and that my mother has been lying to me for the past years of my life, which was 14 years old, and that the man at the time was not my father. She said to me, I want you to take it to your grave if your mother never owns up and tell you yourself. And I said, okay.
That's tough. Curtis's mother says that she gave birth to Curtis at 16 and was dating a man named Kirk at the time. That was when she realized she was pregnant. However, she started her cycle again and thought maybe she wasn't pregnant. That's when she met the man she made Curtis believe was her father. So she basically was never sure about who the father was. However, the twists don't end there.
My alleged father at the time, she said, he's not really your dad, baby. And I said, okay, I already know that. My Nana already told me. She told me another name. She didn't tell me Kirk's name. She gave me another name. So I said, oh, I'm just so happy. I'm gonna call Nana and I'm gonna tell her that such and such is my dad. And then she goes, oh, no. I need to tell you the truth.
There's a lot to unpack here. Why did Curtis's mom lie? Is there something deeper here to unravel? Let's find out.
I knew one day that I would have to sit up real down and talk to her and let her know who her father is. The time that I set forth for her was at the age of 16.
At the age of 16?
But
what if something was supposed to happen to me in between the times?
I was the mother. I was the one who took care of you, raised you.
You raised me, but I didn't have a father.
It did not matter whether you had a father or not.
Tameka, who's Curtis's mom, seems to think the fact that she raised her daughter, gave her an education and put a roof over her head means that she doesn't have to tell her the truth. But that's an odd moral standing, given that a child needs both of their parents.
You raised me, but I didn't have a father.
It did not matter whether you had a father or not, to me. Because I was the mother, I was the one that was supporting you, keeping a roof over your head, and making sure that you went to school and you got the education that you needed, okay?
I don't care what she's saying. I wanted a dad. I've always wanted a dad.
Tameka defends herself by saying that she was young and she made a mistake as a teenager. It's hard not to feel some compassion for her. It's difficult to imagine the emotional strength it took her to raise a child at 16. But does that really excuse lying to her own child about her father and doing that for 14 long years?
I said, I always wanted Abril to understand that I was young. I made a mistake. I didn't want her to be a victim of that.
She wanted to live the rest of her childhood life through me. She wanted me to do the things that she wasn't able to do. I didn't even go to the prom because I don't know how to dance. I don't know how to do anything that my father should have taught me.
It's clear that Ms. Tameka Hall doesn't think too much of her daughter's feelings. She thinks she's exaggerating her pain, and it's truly extraordinary that a woman can see her own child in so much pain and still dismiss it like it doesn't matter. When Curtis eventually learned that Kirk was her father, she went around searching for him, and that opened up another can of worms in her life.
The same night that me and my Nana, we had the discussion and we found out where he was, then I started to write him letters and everything.
Excuse me, Your Honor. When all the rumors and everything was speculating through the family, as far as like about who the baby daddy mama drama that was going on, I found through a cousin of mine where he was in prison.
In the letter, Kirk writes back. He says he's willing to be the father Curtis needs and deserves. That should round things up quite nicely, shouldn't it? Curtis gets her father, Kirk gets a daughter, and Tameka doesn't have to worry anymore. But that's not what happened. This letter angered Tameka because she believed that Kirk was just using Curtis as a ruse to get out of jail.
I know you may not understand how I feel about this right here, but that's where I feel like I was deceived and crossed because I had my time that I had set aside to do the right thing.
She wants me to be like I'm the bad person, regardless of someone else having to come to tell me about who is supposed to be my biological father. You should have told me.
Now it's time for us to learn from Kirk himself. What does he think about all of this? Does he think that Curtis is really his daughter? Does he want to have a relationship with her? It's time for us to find out.
You believe you're Miss Curtis's father?
Well, Your Honor, I'm actually somewhat doubtful And having said that, it's because the way the situation went down. When Tamika initially told me, hey, I'm pregnant, you're the father. But as I remember, she was also in a relationship with someone else. That was actually convenient for me, being that I was with somebody.
This is jaw-dropping. Kirk doesn't believe that Curtis is his daughter because Tamika was dating someone else while she was with him. And remember, all of this happened when Tamika was just around 16 years old. The incredible thing here is the hurt that all of this is placing on Tamika. Her mother doesn't know who her father is. Her supposed biological father doesn't think she's his. It's all so emotionally draining for Curtis.
Were you ever told definitively that you were not her father?
Yes, I was.
Now, when was that?
That had to have been like a year or two later, but after
And who told you this, Kirk?
It was a mutual friend of ours.
I don't know who could have told him that, but that's just something he's saying.
And then 14 years later, I get a letter in the mail.
Curtis now believes that both her parents are great liars, and she's been lied to all her life. She believes that Kirk was using her and was only writing to her to pass time.
He wanted to know little things about me so he can get to know me through the letters. He promised me when he come home, he'll do things with me that he's never done. When he got home, he didn't do none of that, and he still haven't done none of that. I was trying to help him get out of the halfway house so he can come home and spend time with me, but he didn't want to do all that.
So here's what it looks like. Tameka isn't sure if Kirk is Curtis's father. Kirk isn't sure either, but he used Curtis to pass time while incarcerated and also used her to get himself a job.
Then he went to the halfway house. The purpose of me trying to get him a job with my mom is so during his little break times, he can spend time with me. Around that time, it was the summertime for me, so there's no excuses of me having to be in school because I never had to go to summer school. I've always been a good student, straight A.
Now it's time for the results. Is Kirk Curtis's father, or has all of this been for nothing? Has Tameka turned her daughter's life upside down just because she wasn't sure who impregnated her? Time to find out.
Mr. Whitaker, you are her father. Mr. Whitaker, Miss Curtis, how you feel, Miss Curtis?
I feel really good. I'm really happy to have my dad.
Oh.
I'm overwhelmed.
You are?
I'm overwhelmed, yeah.